Earlier we were talking about momentum. Another word being inertia as a force that's out here, especially for humans in a kind of a big deal way. Often not in a very helpful way, if we're talking about also ascension as being helpful. So could you talk a little bit about inertia and what it is?
What it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Inertia is blood karma. So, inertia is fear. Anxiety, insecurity, all of these things are those things that formulate inertia as it takes various forms in the self-mind of human beings. Animals can also be in fear and slowed down as a result or sped up, depending. So slow down inertia and you have too much speed inertia. So, both the same. What we're talking about is being forced to move despite any caution to the contrary. So, momentum that is unconscious or momentum that is superconscious, that's momentum. The force of movement or motion, like a wave. Tsunami is momentum. So, human beings are subject to all manner of waves passing around and about and through the earth. Some of them show up one way, some of them show up another way. Depends on what you're doing, what you're being, and what your interaction is with such waves. See, all forms of momentum, levels of momentum, karmas of momentum. Sometimes you seem to be right where you would like to be in your life experience, and sometimes you feel you got in too deep too soon, or sometimes you're waiting to get in deep and you can't get any deeper and you're stuck there. Momentum.
Yeah, so momentum or inertia, not just in the positive, the keeping of momentum, but also when there is a lack of momentum.
Trying to find balance in the presence of momentum, or in the middle of the stream or the wave that we are apparently on, because it's taking you, moving you forward, or maybe it's pulling you backward. It depends on your perception of what it is. So the momentum is everything. It's also timing. So we have the momentum of timing. What is your astrologic momentum? And then we put the focus on the movement or lack of movement of planets, which are correlative, of course. So there's a correspondence there if you're subtle enough to see the correspondence. Not dumb enough, but subtle enough to see it. We are in that flow, that timing, so to speak. You have to discern that for yourself. And there's spiritual momentum that is not even operating from the physical laws of matter and energy, space and time. Right? You can have an awakening all of a sudden, leap from one state to another state, and that radically changes your momentum. It could happen in a dream. It could happen in an encounter. It could happen under its own conditions. And all of a sudden, where you were is no longer where you are. You don't exactly know what happens. You maybe have been pulled into or pushed into a movement outside of your time and space as it was. And this can happen. You can be in one flow of momentum and see somebody in urgent need, and you shift. You shift, and then you don't know what happened, because you can shift and then have a burst of adrenaline and be a super person. You shift and say, okay, I didn't do that, I couldn't do that. See, momentum. See, modification or modulation of momentum can happen. So people who are practicing try to rest to the degree to where they are open to higher levels of momentum for that spiritual push, let us say. To to close the gap between this time and this time. Get to, let's say, now sooner than later. Momentum. The end of time. Momentum. The restarting of time. Momentum. Recreation. Momentum. Self-liberation. Momentum. Transcending stuckness. Momentum. Recognizing stuckness in your friends and people who are like stuck where they are, and then feeling that, well, because they're where they are, you need to be where they are. Big question mark. Whose momentum is valid for you, or better for you than your own? Question. Say, momentum. Should you wait as long as other people need to wait? Or do you need to find your own tempo and you move at your own tempo? Momentum. Are you as fast as your family or slower than your family? Momentum. Hanging out with people that accelerate your progression? Momentum.
Sure.
Burn code mantra. Chapter 2. Cut through musical mind phenomena, karma, and tendencies into the heat of no sound. Then hear into the fire of infinite space of peaceful transcendent grace. Knowing beyond all positive and negative energy forms of self-thought, mind, body, and world, here, out into and beyond all directions, all beings, all worlds, all realities, all forms of beings and non-beings, all things and no things, all sounds and no sounds, all lights and no lights, all sensations and no sensations, all impulses and no impulses, all perceptions and no perceptions, all realizations and no realizations. Who can do that? Right. What momentum are we talking about? So we're talking about the speed of light momentum, which we are capable of. So we're talking about the depth of understanding that is related to dharmic enlightenment, momentum. Are we talking about higher intelligence, higher cosmic intelligence, momentum, where we are at a galaxial level of vibration or reality? As we are the total, we are the all, and then we are less. Momentum. Self-momentum, cosmic momentum, heart momentum, enlightenment momentum, realization momentum, liberation momentum, and suffering momentum all together. Do we have the need or the ability to move from one level of dense momentum to the next level of etheric momentum? Of course. Who cares about it? So we have the option of all potential momentum, speed, presence, action, hesitation, assertion, aggression, elevation.
What does momentum mean? How are you using that word?
You've heard it used in many different levels of application.
Yeah, it seems like...
In general, it's movement. In general, it's movement. It's already been clarified. It's movement. As speed. As matter. Energy. Space-time. The universe. Yeah. We have different levels or intensities of experience, emotion, thinking, understanding, knowing, practice, and realizing different levels. As stated earlier, you can be at this momentum for a while, a moment or so, and then be able to shift or be pulled into another momentum. It's all about the momentum of the time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not a thing you figure out and analyze and think you're going to get it any better by thinking about it. No. It's beyond that. So you let it go. You let it reveal itself. Figuring it out doesn't make it more or less what it's supposed to be doing beyond your self-mind or anybody's self-mind. Yeah. It's not a thought process exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a liberated view, if we can put it in those terms. It's a free view. Free view. Because what we're trying to attain or communicate to the people is their variable momentum potential.
Earlier you suggested that it was possible to be free of momentum or free of inertia.
Well, a type of inertia, the hold back inertia, yes, it's possible. It's not only possible, it's probable, depending on who you're around, who you're with, and under what conditions. So we look for the intensity factor here. If a person has low intensity, you might want to be with a person of higher intensity, and you start to feel that. Your momentum changes accordingly. It doesn't become the other, but it definitely responds to the other. Okay? It's variable intensity. So, until, let's say, you are liberated and you don't have a body whatsoever, to be measuring, quantifying any kind of momentum, movement, or livingness, for that matter. Operational reality, it's momentum. Could be a plane of thought, could be a level of thought, could be another universe that you're allowed to be in while you're even in this universe. So you have a momentum of being in the conscious body, you have a momentum of being in the unconscious body, you have a momentum of being in the superconscious body. And practitioners have to try and manage those three realities for themselves. Dream world as a level where they can gauge what their potential momentum is, or sometimes, if they're not evolved enough, they have to be dealing with past karma momentum and how that's affecting their present practice, holding them back depending on whether or not it was tragic, super painful, or anything of that sort, where it's too much pain and slowing you down too much, stopping you, in fact. Mm-hmm. So you have to gain momentum. So sometimes a certain form of practice, understanding that you're suffering inner tension and dark energy, and thus slow down momentum. So you start to accelerate it by understanding beyond that what you need to be, not what has been troubling you, and then that's the ancestry. So you got to go beyond the momentum of the ancestry, and put that to rest. So you have family momentum. See, even though your parents or parents in general that you know are seemingly okay, they may be suffering the same momentum of their ancestors that we are referring to in terms of the hold down momentum, stop progressing momentum. No progression, just be right here, stop. We're not talking enlightenment stopness, we're talking about karmic slowness, right, which is heavier momentum. Good to know it so you can adapt yourself to getting beyond it as needed. Variable momentum intensity.
So in physics, momentum is made up of speed and weight, let's say. And so we're talking about different densities that people carry. Their mental density creates momentum, whether it's moving or whether it's still. And
all things are considered. And relative momentum intensity applies to all beings and things relative to their nature.
Yeah. And so the different qualities of momentum that you're talking about, to me, the significance is in the density of what you're discussing.
Or we're talking about the person then. Who it is that you're associated with or working with or in love with, whose density is greater than yours, and thus you have to slow down to keep up with it.
Although very fast-moving, very dense things have tremendous energy.
It's relative.
Like a cannonball.
It's relative, yes, that's
They
relative.
can penetrate, they can destroy. And so spiritual momentum seems...
It's relative.
Yeah.
Yeah, spiritual is different. It's not what you see as easily. You have to know it. See? It's like the thought of Earth plus the end of the galaxy or the end of the universe, right? Right? In the same thought.
Yeah.
Infinite space, infinite peace, same thought. Where's the quantum? Right? Where's the quantum physics come into that? We're talking about metaphysics. See? Beyond physical physics. See? Psychophysics. Talking about spiritual physics as such. See? Power. See? Radiance, brilliance, and so on. Intelligence. Right? Cosmic intelligence. Imperceivable. We know it's there. See? Certain people tap into it. They have no doubt about it. See? They're able to work from that, as musicians try to. See? As artists try to, and scientists try to, and religious people try to. Say, work from higher, that is not so obvious, physics, energies, and intelligences. See?
Yeah. And it seems like the subtler and subtler planes, or the subtler and subtler energies we encounter.
Subtler and subtler. To the subtlest.
Progressively subtle.
To the subtlest.
The more interesting the concept of momentum becomes.
Well, you're talking about its cause then. We talked about the causal level of momentum. So it's not more interesting necessarily, but it has to be included as part of its reality.
Yeah, the more nuanced. Yeah. Big plain old physical momentum isn't new to anybody. But understanding one's internal currents and their momentum is potentially very important.
The momentum of the breath and the thought, right? And emotions, as either representing gravity or levity, depending on the evolution of the being.
So earlier you posed the question based on a paragraph from the Burn Code Mantra. The Buddha is already enlightened, so why bother?
Well, what's being begged is the question of what is enlightenment that the Buddha is already, and whether we should bother to practice becoming that if we are already that in potential. So depending on what is meant by that. What is the essence of being, which is what is being referred to in terms of Buddha realization. The ultimate essence of being, or hot essence of being. What does that mean? Which we already are, and which we may already be created of that, but we're not realizedly so. So how do you come into realization of what that is? That is, make it real, moment to moment, completely realized, moment to moment, and to the benefit of other people, moment to moment. So who's willing to give up the pipsqueak notion or concept of Buddha's realization into the full realization of what that is as a way of life. It's a big question. Yeah, that's the paradox. That's the formidable task at hand. Who's willing to master what that means?
Yeah.
So.
And in that quote, there was also there was an inference that we are not merely the potential for enlightenment, but in other quotes you've offered samsara is nirvana, nirvana is samsara. There is present, immediate, already existing here now enlightenment.
When you focus on what that is as essence, yeah, it's potential, right? Potential momentum. So we have to get to the potential of that momentum, which delivers one across the great waters into the nowness of what it means, in fact, to be liberated from self, thought, mind, and world altogether.
What's Dharma?
Dharma. Everything and nothing. Simple question, simple answer.
And how do we get there?
You're already here. You're already here. So you have the Dharma of things, basic things and beings, the Dharma, the reality of anything and everything, and then you have a realization that is called maybe full Dharma realization. You don't get to that necessarily easily. It's what practice and the bridge to the path is about, to that realization, so that you are established in the reality of the realization itself as an ongoing fact, and not as a little sort of like a spurt or a glimpse or a little blip into what exposure to what that could be for the individual. So as a light beyond light, a sound beyond sound, so word beyond word, and reality beyond reality. So it brings in the quality of the beyondness, emptiness, sort of radiance of what it is as itself, not yourself, itself.
And you mentioned the function of sitting practice specifically.
Is to be nothing. Ultimately, to be dead. That's its purpose, is to experience death while you're alive. To be dead, to be empty, void of neuroses, mind forms, ambitions, desires, urges, and everything be clear, slate clear, which is our potential. It's not something other than what we are. It is our basic potential. That's already the case. That's the no consciousness, already the case. Every night you visit it and forget about it. Don't remember it because you're too busy being self, mindful of everything else that you've created as part of your reason for being here as a human being. So it's collapsing both extremes into oneness. So when you have your harmony and your balance there, that you are a karmic being who is enlightened beyond the karma. So you're using the karma instead of being karmically manipulated or enslaved in neurotic behavior.
And when you say you're using the karma, who is the you?
Yeah. Who do you think? What do you think? The obvious, right?
Like that has to do with one's progression.
That's the obvious. It's the all that is. You is the all that is, right? The all-knowing nothing.
So there's almost a paradoxical relationship.
Almost?
I mean, it seems okay. Yeah, that you are using your karma, and that karma is not using you, but it is all karma. And
well,
none of
it is and it isn't karma. See? So we have to be careful that we use language and not be used by language, and take language to be more real than it's intended to be or actually is. Right? It's just language. Therefore, it is taught. It is no word. It is no language, and yet it is what it is. The real itself, the one and only real itself. We have to be careful. It's very subtle, so obvious at the same time.
Your quote from earlier was Dharma, slave or master.
That's a big question. Dharma as slave or Dharma as master? Realization as slave or realization as master? So, whatever that means, I'm not saying it means anything. Dharma as unhappiness or Dharma as happiness? Dharma as bondage or Dharma as liberation? Dharma as selfishness or Dharma as whole heart, open compassion to all beings and things? Say, just radiance of the heart. Say, that's what it's meant by Dharma, slave or master. That's the opportunity each being has, say, to learn more, to be more, and offer more goodness to other beings. Goodness in terms of sound advice to other beings, straight talk, heart to heart with others. Find that resonance so that there's nobody talking and nobody hearing it. Say, that's straight talk from heart to heart. Can we do that? Of course. Are we ready to do that? It's possible. We hope sooner than later. Heart to heart means no heart in between. It's just heart. Heart isness. If we can live from heart isness, it's good practice.